Hello and welcome everyone to Salesforce Women in Tech Group Kolkata. We are here with part 7 of Pardot Zero to Hero workshop. A very quick introduction about me. My name is Khyati Mehta. I'm a proud Salesforce marketing champion. I was recently featured on Salesforce blog for my outreach work. I'm professionally working as a Salesforce developer at Cognizant Technology Solutions. I'm 4x Salesforce certified. I'm also a community speaker and a trailhead mentor. I run my blog named as All About Salesforce, and I also run a podcast named Salesforce Orbits with Kathy. So you can tweet your heart out, and you can also post it over LinkedIn and Twitter, your key takeaways from the session, your likes or dislikes about the session, and make sure that you tag with Kolkata Pardot Khyatu07 and our today's speaker, Vicky Henry 63, and also use hashtags with Kolkata and with Pardot. So agenda of the workshop is this 8-day workshop will include everything about Pardot with detailed demos wherever applicable. Now the workshop is planned in a detailed exercise manner so that it helps you all understand everything from scratch about Pardot. We have an amazing lineup of marketing champions to cover the exercises and offer their guidance. Please note, we will not be able to provide a practice org, but we'll do our best to include detailed demos. We will also try our best to cover all the release updates for each topic. So we have none other than Vicky with us today. She is a Salesforce marketing champion. She is also a Salesforce certified instructor. She is also a non-profit consultant and is 11x Salesforce certified. Over to you, Vicky. I think you're on mute, Vicky.
And there we go. Now that you've let the screen go, then I can go ahead and share my screen as well. So hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. And I'm just going to blow these up nice and big so that nobody needs glasses after this presentation. So today we're going to be talking about, especially Engagement Studio. We'll be going over a little bit of grading as well off of the back of your session or the last session of day 6. And Khyati did a great job introducing myself, so I'll kind of just jump into things. So yes, I've been in Marketing Cloud for about 2 years, and Pardot, I was actually more on the user side and the admin side myself with Supermoms. And we were using Pardot for 3 years now. And now I'm moving into Pardot Consulting with Sama Consulting in January. So very excited to be here all with you today. I'm a certified instructor and have taught Marketing Cloud for a while, but not as much in the Pardot teaching side, but have put together some slides and some demos for us today. So talking about Pardot prospect grading, that is a bit of a tongue twister, especially for a Monday morning. So the difference between grading and scoring is all about how interested the prospect is in you. How interested are they in your organization? So it may be somebody really is interested in your company. They open things, they show that engagement. Really good scoring has them going up and down as well based off of their actions. So for example, if they submit a form, you might put them up 100 points because that shows a lot of interest in your organization, in your company, in your product, whatever it is you're selling. But then if they get a form error, that might bring them down some points. Or if they're not engaged for 3 months, then you bring them down. So it really is all about that engagement level with you. Grading, on the other hand, is how interested you should be in the prospect. Because it may be that you have somebody whose score is really high, but actually it's because they're a competitor and they've been checking you out for a while to see what you're doing and what your product's doing, what your marketing is like, things like that. It does happen. So the grading is going to be all around how interested you should be in the client, how much they fit that profile of your ideal customer. And you can have a couple different profiles so that you have different customer types or different prospect types. So it may be that you have one customer that is B2B and you have a B2B section of your company, a B2C section of your company where you're selling to businesses and then you're selling to clients directly. Well, you may have both of those in different profiles because they have different criteria that's going to put them in that profile of the perfect customer. So grading is going to be letter grades, and coming from the US, these are our grades like in school. So I don't know if that's the same everywhere. I know that it depends on the school systems in France. It is not the same. So it's going to be ranging from F, which is poor, all the way up here to A plus. And we have in parentheses kind of how you can gauge these, because A is already great, A plus is absolutely fantastic, B is still good, C's average down here, D is either below average or not graded, and then F is poor. So this is all about the idea of passing somebody over from the marketing qualified leads over to the sales team. So we want to be qualifying so that our sales team and our sales agents, they only contact the people who are actually going to be useful and on the point of conversion. And that way they can prioritize their time and be able to drive those sales a little bit more. And we're getting the more marketing qualified leads over the line. So there are, if you count in between these, there are 10 increments of these letter grades, and it goes up and down by 1/3 because each grade, each letter has an A minus, an A, or an A plus. So a prospect does start down here at D. When they come in as a prospect, they're automatically going to be assigned the default profile unless that you assign them another one. And they're going to come in as a D. That D grade won't show though straight away until they're assigned. So we're going to be able to use two different parts of the Pardot functionality. That's going to be profiles and automation roles, so that we can either manually or automatically assign the correct profile and then assign the correct grade. And really grade, you're thinking about criteria. So we're somebody probably, unless they change titles or something like that, it has to be a big change, but more than likely they're not going to be changing grades as much. Whereas the scoring, that is going to be very dynamic and changing all the time. So I do have a lot of text here. I'm not going to read through all this, but I'm just going to highlight the major points. And I put this all in here so that we can share this presentation out later and you can come back and review, especially if you're thinking about taking the Pardot exam. Then it'll be really important to know the difference between scoring and grading. And even when you're going out into Pardot job roles, you'll want to be able to explain this to a customer. Why should they set up scoring? Why should they set up grading? If they're not using it, then they're missing out on part of the Pardot functionality. And we really, as consultants or even as in-house Pardot administrators, we want to be helping our clients, our customers, to get the most out of Pardot. So as soon as a prospect converts, then they're assigned that grade of D, and we have our profiles, but a grade is not displayed until somebody has either matched or not matched the assigned profiles criteria. So if you don't see a grade right away, that's not a big problem. It is a D in the background because they haven't been assigned or changed a profile, but it will not show until they're either matched or not matched. They will be associated with the default profile though, unless a different one is assigned to them. So that's where you can have some automation that's assigning people to different profiles, maybe depending on a form that they're submitting. If they submit a certain type of form, we know that they fit this profile because they're showing that interest in us. Well, we may have a completion action on that form that assigns them a different profile. It can be also that you manually change profile criteria, and it has the little thumbs up, thumbs down, so that you can move people up and down on that criteria. And you can use automation rules. We'll take a look at those in a demo real quick, because I find that especially grading, if you've never seen how it works and how it's set up in Pardot, it's a lot of hypothetical and theoretical stuff right now. So we'll see it in action, and that way we'll be able to hopefully understand it a little bit more. And one thing to keep in mind is that editing a profile's criteria, all of the associated prospects, so the people who have that profile, are going to be regraded. So it's not something that you want to do all the time, because you will be changing people's grades. It does have an effect and it works retroactively, but you are going to want to change it with your business. So if your business changes, if your considerations change, then you're going to want to change your profile. I'd say that between the two, scoring is the piece that you're always tinkering with. You're always having a play with it. You're trying to get that scoring measures and metrics right based off of what you're seeing. What conversion rates are you having? How did those people engage? What shows the sign of a really engaged prospect? Whereas grading, once you've got it right, unless you have major changes to your business, you're probably not going to change it too awfully much. So it might just be at the beginning that you're really changing those profiles and those grades a little bit more. So to set up grading, there's going to be 3 main steps. First, you're going to be identifying your criteria. So what is it that makes somebody fit into a certain profile? Here, notice we're not saying that the company size has to be a certain size. We're just saying company size is going to be important to us. So it's working with your sales team and even with the rest of your business. So your customer service agents may see who is really engaged with your product afterwards. So get everybody involved. And you're going to be able to define what that perfect customer looks like. Then you're going to be setting the weight of the criteria. So all prospects are going to be weighted in 1/3 increments. So for each of these, say we have location, company size, and title that are important to us in this profile that we're creating. Well, we may say that not all 3 of them are equal. Actually, we found that they really can be located anywhere. There is a certain location that helps out more, but it's the company size that really makes the difference when it comes to our prospects converting into sales. So we are going to give our company size a higher weight. Maybe they're going to move an entire letter grade when they have the right company size, but with the right location or title, they might just move at that 1/3 increment. That's the smallest that we can do. So really you can think of that weighting as what's moving somebody up and down on that scale. And then we're going to have our criteria rules. So this is where we automate. And I like to say that I am a lazy admin marketer, whatever role I'm in, because I like everything to be automated at the end of the day. And that's what Pardot, it's a marketing automation tool. So we want everything to be just set up at the beginning and then running off on its own. And that's where we can have these automation rules to help assign profiles. And then based off of their weightings, and I'm just going to move this little image down so we can see the rest of the text, then we are going to be able to move them up and down. So this is where we're deciding what that criteria actually is. The company size is greater than 100 people, for example. And we'll be defining all of that in our automation rules. So now I'm going to take us on a quick demo of grading before we move on to our engagement studio. So here I'm in Pardot. Just to cover my bases, this is a dummy org with dummy information, so it's not any real people's information, not breaking GDPR or any compliance rules there today. So we're in Pardot. We have the Pardot Dashboard. This is Pardot Lightning. So if your Pardot looks a little bit different and it's all in one tab, it may be that you still are on Pardot Classic. And at that point, I'd recommend definitely talking to your organization about moving over to Lightning, because there's so many new functionality that is coming out with Pardot, especially over the past year. There's been a lot that's been built into the Pardot roadmap. So if you haven't moved to Lightning yet, you probably want to invest the time and do that. And then when you are in Lightning, you'll see all these tabs here that we're able to put into a nice Pardot app. So here we are going to be in our prospects tab, and we will be able to see all of our contacts here from Salesforce. So we have our leads and contacts, our Pardot prospects as well. And this is where we have our segmentation. So we, just as a little review, your Pardot prospects are people who have shared their email with you. So a visitor is just somebody who's maybe visited your website, you have their IP address, but you don't have their email yet. When they submit a form, when they share that information with you, they convert into a prospect. In Pardot, we're all about turning our prospects into marketing qualified leads, and then we can hand them over to the sales team as sales qualified leads. So we have under segmentation, this profiles. And here's where you'll be able to see the profiles that you have set up. So we have 2 in here right now, and we have our default profile. So this is going to be the one that, like in its name, it's the default one. Everybody's going to be assigned to this profile unless we manually change them or assign them to the other profile. So here we have some criteria. We have the company size, the industry, the location, the job title, and the department. These are going to be our criteria. So going back to those 3 steps before, we've identified our criteria. These are the things that are important to us as an organization. And then step 2, what's the weighting? Well, the weighting is going to be those letter scores next to it. So we can see that actually the job title here is the most important part to us because we're saying it's going to be a 3 out of 3 letter score. And this is where, when you're setting up those weightings, you want to keep in mind that there's 10 increments total. So you don't want to jump too much or too little. You want to keep that in mind when you're setting these up. Otherwise, everybody will be an A+, and then that's not really helpful to you at the end of the day. So we want to keep it something that's useful. And then we have all of our prospects down here that are in that grade. So we can start to see these grades being surfaced. And this is where that comparison between the scores and the grade are really helpful. Because when we're passing it off to our sales team, we may define a sales qualified lead as having a certain score and a certain grade. Because if somebody has an F, even if they have 1,000 score, we're still not going to pass them over to the sales team because more than likely they are not going to convert. Whereas if somebody has an A+, but maybe they're not as engaged, they might only have 500 or 200, we may pass them over a little bit easier because they are so close to that perfect profile. So that's where this all comes into the big picture of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish as marketers. So we have our default. I'll just come in here and edit the profile so that you can see what this looks like when you're setting it up. But you have your profile in here. You can add any tags as well. We have profile added in. And this is where you can decide those adjustments. So it can be nothing, it can be 1/3, 2/3, or a full letter grade that it's moving. And if it's a full letter grade, you would have seen on the front end, it's 3 out of 3. And that tells you that it moves you up those 3 increments. And then we can see the summary and the prospects. So if we decided that actually our industry, not quite as important, so we're going to move this down, or let's make it the location instead. We're saying that the location's not quite as important, so let's move it down a little bit and we can go ahead and save this. And what this is going to do is it's going to regrade all of these prospects here. So do keep in mind that that retroactively happens and it regrades. And you can even see in the message, the profile has been saved successfully, prospects will be regraded shortly. And that's why I do demos in a dummy.
Hi guys, can you hear me? Yeah, it seems like there must be some glitch from Vicky's side, so we need to wait for a minute. Rejoin. Thank you all. Hi, Vicky.
Hi there. Sorry about that, everybody. I lost power real quick, so I am hotspotting it. Hopefully, you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Nothing like a short power outage in the middle of a session, but
True.
we'll hop back into it. So, yes, hopefully you everything that I did here and the message coming up about our profile being saved successfully and regraded. So just give me a shout, by the way, if you can't hear me at any point, because like I said, I'm going off of my mobile here. So I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but does anybody, or actually I didn't finish that. So let's come in and we've seen the profile. Let's take a quick look at our automation rules. So we have some automation rules that are already created, and right now they're paused actually, just because once again, this is a dummy org. So this is an automation rule that is around prospect grading. And I would highly recommend using a naming convention like this because you want to know when you're looking at your prospect or at your automation rules, which ones are used for segmentation or for other things that you're doing in your marketing automation, which ones are used for your prospect grading. So this one is prospect grading on company size. And we can come in and edit it. And we can see that it's saved to a folder. You're going to have to choose which one you want to put it. You can put a description, but if your naming convention is good enough, then you should be able to understand here. You might want to just add a little bit more in the description field for anybody else who's coming into your organization, and so that they can understand what everything that you've set up is used for. And then we have our rule and our match type. So it's going to be a match all, match any. And we're going to say that this particular one is around employees and if our employees are less than 501. And our actions are going to be to change the profile criteria. And we're going to say that on the default profile, so you can select your profile here. What is our criteria? Well, it's our company size we're talking about. And we want if it matches. So you can choose matches, does not match, or not known here. And that will set up your automation so that your profile is automatically upgraded when somebody hits that criteria. So I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, that's one around automations, engagement studio. We're definitely going to get to that in just a moment. And I actually have some slides around that one. Awesome. About grading, then we will hop on into Engagement Studio because we have plenty to go over there today. So Engagement Studio on the Pardot Specialist exam is going to be 17% of your exam grade. So it is going to be a big section just on one piece of functionality from Pardot. So you're going to want to get familiar with this. And it's distinguishing between the components. So that's where we're going to be looking at what those components are, what they do, and then also explaining the process of updating an engagement program, including its assets. And as I've seen in the chat, there's a question around wait time, and that is a big part of this bullet point because what happens when you edit an engagement? How does it work? And that's what we're going to be reviewing today too. So first of all, what is Engagement Studio? Well, Engagement Studio is our nurture journey tool. So it's a very powerful tool. You can do very simple engagements. You can do very complex engagements. And I have seen some behemoths with customers before. Just the other day, I opened up one and you couldn't even read what was on the little action points and on each step because there was just so much on that canvas. So they can get really complex very quickly. And sometimes it's that you start off with a simple one, and as your business matures, as your marketing campaigns mature, then you keep adding to it, you keep progressing it, and it can become more complex later on. So when do you use engagements? Well, it may be that you're doing a drip campaign or a welcome customer onboarding. Welcome journeys are one of the highest engagement points with customers because they are really interested. They've just signed your organization, for your marketing, and it's one of really the best marketing points to take advantage of. So it's a great point to put an engagement in, and really to be surfacing your material to them based on off of their engagement with you. You can have it for product launches or maybe an event that you're running, like the event here today. We might do a drip campaign that's leading up to it or something like that. It can be a re-engagement campaign, maybe an upsell program or an industry specific education program. And on my very last slide here today, I have a list of extra resources and links. There's a really great white paper from Pardot themselves around 6 use cases, and they give you examples and how complex it is to set up and things like that. So that's a great resource to start off with if you're just looking for some ideas, or even if you've been working with Pardot for a while and just want some new ideas, some fresh material. I like seeing what other people are doing so that I can mimic some of that myself for my customers. And some questions to get us started, because you're a specialist or a consultant, whether you're in-house or working with customers, you're always going to be asking the same sort of almost business analysis questions. So who is your target audience? We're going to use that when we're setting up here. Do you have a suppression list? Are there people that should be excluded? Maybe you have a list of competitors, like we talked about earlier. You don't want them getting all of your marketing material really easily. So you put them on a competitors list and you use that as a suppression. So even if they are on that target audience on our recipient list up here, if they're also on our suppression list, they won't enter the engagement. And that's what we want to happen. You are going to pick a folder. So you always want to have your marketing assets nice and organized. I love keeping everything nice and organized in folders, and always recommend having your folder structure actually set up first, so that you're organized from the beginning and it makes sense for your business. You can choose whether or not you want to include business days or not, or exclude them. So especially if you're working in B2B marketing, you're working with other companies, they're going to be reading their email over the weekdays. They're going to be working business days, business hours. I may decide that I want to only send emails during business hours only. So I tick this little box here. And then I can choose those business days. Maybe I know that this particular business or this particular industry, people don't have a tendency of working on Fridays as much. That's kind of there's a lot, maybe we're in the tech space and there's a lot of half days or something like that, or we just know that that's not as high of a reading day. So we may decide that we want to exclude that completely. So you can decide what actual business days. And then our day start and end time. So when does a typical business day start and end, and make sure that you're selecting the right time zone here. So there's some really creative articles out there. If you are working across time zones, you can look up some blogs. There's some great ideas about how to kind of expand this. Or it may be that we're working with individual customers and they're reading their emails all the time. So we're B2C, we don't really care about business days. We want to still send on Saturdays and Sundays. So this is where you have to make decisions based off of your organization and your industry, your business, what you know about your customers. And then our very last question here is a big one. Should prospects be able to enter the program more than once? Well, if it is maybe a satisfaction survey engagement, so somebody has submitted a case with us, we've closed the case and we're saying, okay, now we're going to send them down an engagement to get some more information, to maybe based off of their case, give them some more educational material, make sure that they're happy. We can have that all going into an engagement. And we may want that engagement to happen each time that they close a case. So even if they're previously in an engagement, we want them to still be able to re-enter that if they open and close another case with us. Then we select this box that allows people to enter the program more than once. Otherwise, it may be that we don't want to send repeat information. If you're in a product launch campaign, for example, you don't want to start getting duplicates. So a product launch or even a top of mind nurture campaign, a lot of times in engagement, you'll think of more of those long nurtures too. Somebody who needs a lot of special care and lots of great emails, but maybe spaced out over a while. And we're going to set this nurture campaign up over a couple of months. So that one as well, we might want them not to be able to enter more than once. So select it. And this is just a little bit more information about those repeat engagement programs and some considerations here. So you'll see that we can, underneath, when we do tick this box, we can decide the days before they're eligible to re-enter. So is there a certain time period or a certain wait period? Maybe we want to wait at least 7 days because maybe, especially with our case example, if we're waiting days, we're figuring that those two cases are probably not related, where we've seen that if people submit cases 3 days apart, it's usually on the same subject. So we're not going to put back into an engagement program just based off of that second case. And then we can limit the number of times that they can re-enter. So we can either do unlimited, say there's no limit here, or maybe we're saying that, okay, well, getting feedback off of a case, we're actually going to limit them only to 3 or 5 times. We don't want to be bothering them each and every time. So how often are our customers or prospects going to be happy to go into this engagement? Because really at the end, we are all about the authentic marketing. We want to be doing marketing programs, marketing campaigns that are going to be engaging our users and keeping them active, but without overloading them. So just for the sake of time here, we'll go into our engagement studio components, and then I'll do a little demo of everything all together there. So our engagement components, and remember, this is one whole bullet point to itself on the specialist exam. So you want to kind of take notes here and get familiar with these. So they're going to be broken down into 3 different categories. And if we go to one of the slides with a example campaign, you have your start. This is what we were looking at before. And then each of these little icons down here, all the way up until the end, is going to be what we call a step in engagement. So we're going to be setting up different steps, different paths, and this is where you can get really complex paths. So it may be that one prospect has a completely different experience based off of the data that you're holding on them and based off of their engagement with you than somebody else that comes into the same exact engagement. So just coming back here, our different types of steps are going to be our triggers. So these are going to be used to define steps based on prospect actions. So a trigger, it's always listening for something happening in the system. So in this case, it's listening to a prospect who opens or clicks in an email that you've sent to them. It's going to be that action-based step. Our rules are going to be around criteria. So it's going to be different criteria, maybe based off of somebody's grade, because we were just talking about grading before. So depending on their grade, we may have different actions or different steps that we do with them. We take them down a different path in our engagement. And a single rule can evaluate up to 5 conditions. Come exam time, they like to ask about limits, about maxes, mins, conditions. That's the type of thing that you want to take note of. So if you're writing down, take a highlighter and make sure that you mark that one. And it can be a complex rule. So a complex rule is just a rule with more than one condition. Then it's considered complex. For our actions, these are going to be steps that do something to a prospect. So a trigger is action-based as well, but it's based off of our prospect doing something, our customer doing something. Actions are something we do to the prospect. So it may be something like sending an email or assigning them a profile or changing a field value, whether that's in Salesforce CRM or on your prospect record. So it is going to be different than the trigger. They're both around actions, but triggers are the action. Actions are us taking the action as marketers. So here are just some examples, and this is taken out of help articles. So you can see the link and you can come to these help articles, bookmark it, come back to it. It's great study material and just reference material in general. Our triggers for our trigger steps are going to be things like email opens, email link clicks, activity as well. And there are some further ones here. It may be submitting, either viewing or submitting a form, and then a landing page as well. So there is some additional information in here around these two. Just the last one here is a custom redirect click. So with a form and a landing page, I think you've already gone through this in a previous day in this boot camp, but if you're just joining us fresh now, then a form can be a standalone Pardot form, or it can be a form that's embedded in a Pardot landing page. If it's embedded on a Pardot landing page, then that landing page is actually going to be our trigger. It's going to be considered the parent. So any triggers that we want to be firing, it will not fire if we just have the form where the form is actually sitting on a landing page. So that's where you want to be familiar with how your marketing assets are set up. And maybe you do have a form and a landing page step for the same form. If you know that some people are coming in through the form by itself, and other people are coming in through that same form, but on a landing page, we want to make sure that we're getting everybody. So we might actually use both of them. Just remember that landing page trumps everything. If the form is on the landing page, it's going to be the landing page trigger. And then our rules. So these are some samples of rules that we can set up, and we can assign to a Salesforce or to a user. And that is going to be bringing them into our CRM as a contact or a lead. So it will be surfacing them in the CRM for our sales users or any other users who are living in Salesforce. Our assignment status, so we can check whether or not somebody's assigned or not. We can also have rules around grades. So grading that we saw before, wouldn't it be nice if we had somebody, maybe one of our sales agents, calling up the individual? We're in a B2B situation. They're going to be calling up that company. If they are an A+, or maybe just anything higher than an A-, if they're an A-, A, or A+, we want to actually be giving them a ring and seeing if they're interested. Whereas if they're lower than that, we might just be able to be sending them some emails to try to nurture them a little bit more before we hand the sales team, or before we actually have any human interaction with them. We can also engage with their list membership. So either put them on a list, take them off a list, or if they're on a list, send them down a certain path. We are going to be able to base our rules off of prospect custom fields and default fields as well. And then things like scores, any tags that we have within an engagement itself. Tags are actually really useful because a list is putting somebody on and off of a list. That may be actions that we're taking later, but it may be that we just have certain tags that are tagging them, and you're able to use that as almost a tracker going down your engagement, and you can use that as a rule. So you can say, well, if they got a certain tag at some point during our engagement, then we're going to send them down this path, where otherwise they are going to go down another path. So it just adds a little bit of flexibility. Once again, there's some great blog articles around using tags in your engagements. We can also base our rules off of things like campaigns, our campaign statuses, even email statuses as well. So if you have a engagement that's maybe cleaning up your prospect list for you, you can have things around that opted out status or that do not email. Have they bounced before? We can have our Pardot campaigns in here as well, and then our Salesforce status. So is the status lead, contact, or deleted in Salesforce CRM? And then this brings us to our actions. So our actions are going to be actually things that we're Up to this point, we've listened for what people do. We have evaluated rules or set up rules to send them down different paths. Now we're going to be talking about the actions that we can take during this engagement, and that's where Engagement Studio gets to be a lot of fun. So we can add people to lists, we can add them to Salesforce campaigns, we can adjust their scores up and down based off of their engagement. Maybe if they clicked on an email within this engagement, then we want them to their score to go up even higher than if they had just clicked the email and they weren't in this engagement, because you can still have completion actions going off of that email. We can also apply tags, like I mentioned before. It can be a lot of fun to play with in engagements and really powerful. Then we can assign people to groups. We can assign to a user, so converting them essentially into the Salesforce CRM, and then assigning to Salesforce via an active assignment rule. And if you see these little asterisks, that just means that you have to have the Pardot Salesforce connector set up in order for this to work correctly. And then more in Salesforce, because just a little history lesson. At one point, Pardot wasn't connected to Salesforce. You could have it as a standalone product. In, I believe it was February 2019. Don't quote me on that date, but I believe that's when it was, that you need to have an active Salesforce license to be able to access Pardot. And that connection was really solidified. So more than likely you have your connector set up correctly. But it does go to show what parts are happening in Salesforce and what's happening in Pardot separately. We can also, as far as actions go, create Salesforce tasks. We can change prospect field values, notify users as well. Maybe we're notifying the opportunity owner that somebody has engaged and maybe should have some follow-up from them. We can remove from lists. We can remove tags if they're not engaged, or maybe we finished using that tag and we a tag that would have entered somebody in a certain action, that action completed, so now we're going to remove it. The same thing can go for lists. And we can also send emails. That's going to be one of the primary things that you're doing in engagements, is probably sending a lot of emails, and it could be different emails with different content based off of people's engagements with you. That's where customization and things like that can come in really handy. Not for this week, but I'm sure that we're covering that somewhere else in either this bootcamp or other material that you can find. And then creating Salesforce tasks too. So a task is really cool because you may have that example of a case survey engagement. Off of the back of a case, we are creating tasks. Well, if somebody clicks on, we have maybe in an email, little thumbs up, thumbs down icon. If somebody clicks on the thumbs up, then we send them a thank you email. But if they click on the thumbs down, that means they're still not happy with us. Rather than send them an email, we might actually create a task in Salesforce for that customer service agent to have a follow-up call and see what's still not working for them, because they're obviously still not happy. We want them to get them back on board. So we'll have the Salesforce tasks doing that work for us. So like I said, any sorts of limits, considerations, come exam time, you want to get familiar with these kinds of things. So limitations, you can have them based off of Pardot. This is also going to be really important if you're going into a consultancy role, for example, because it's one of the things you're going to want to check. If your customer already has Pardot, or even if you're just going into a new role, check what edition of Pardot they have, because we're going to have certain limitations, certain things that you can and can't do depending on your Pardot edition. So growth is going to have a limitation of 20 active engagements. Pardot Plus is 100 and Advanced is 200. You can have up to 10 scheduled and active repeating programs at a time. So notice that that is repeat program. That is the same across all of them. So do keep that in mind. That's a big one. And for best performance, they recommend limiting your program to fewer than 300 steps. And then I will leave some of this for you to read on your own. Like I said, we'll share the link at the end of this session as well. And if your form is on the landing page, then the form viewer submission doesn't satisfy a form trigger, use that landing page trigger as we mentioned before. And this one, my apologies for the typo, Pardot only allows one prospect per address per program. And what this is doing is trying to make sure that we're not sending out duplicate emails. So this is especially a consideration if you're in an industry, a lot of times nonprofits working with donors, you might have husband and wives sharing email addresses or family members sharing email addresses. So do keep that in mind that with a Pardot engagement, they're only going to get that one email per email address per program. So if you are in an industry where you have multiple people sharing the same email address, you might want to get creative with how you're setting up those emails. And a single rule can evaluate up to 5. So I know we saw that before. That's because it's important. I'll sound like a broken record on certain things, but keep it in mind, up to 5 conditions per rule. So now we're going to actually get into Engagement Studio. So in our demo, we have our Pardot, and this time we're going to be coming into automations where we already were for our automation rules, and see Engagement Studio sitting up here at the top. So if we come into Engagement Studio, we do have a couple that are already in here, but I set up one for us today. And it's just going to take a second to open. There we go. So you'll come in. This is a new one, so I haven't activated it before, so that way we'll be able to start it all together. What I have done, just to save us a little bit of time, is to give us a few paths to go down. So we're saying that we're starting. First, you want to have your target audience. So I have a segmentation list that I've created, and I've thrown a couple of prospects into it. So I think I have 5 or 6 people on this one, and I have them in as my recipient list. I've given it a name, I've stuck it in a program or in a folder. It's going to be our general folder. And then I've a little description, and descriptions are especially they're nice for other people who are maybe coming onto your team or trying to look around in Pardot to see what you've set up and why you've set it up. Make it useful. Pretend that somebody is coming into your org for the first time and you're trying to be able to explain things to them. They'll thank you for it later. We list, but this is where a nice competitor suppression list or something like that would be good to go in here. We're going to decide to send it out to email, send it the emails on business hours only. And since in France, we don't have school for the kids on Wednesdays, I've decided to take Wednesdays off. So I'm saying my business days are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The start days and times I've just left as is, but I'm saying that the days usually start around 10 to 4, and I put in my time zone because I am based in France right now. So I'm allowing the prospects to enter this program more than once, and there's a 3-day wait period. So if they become eligible within 2 days, then they're not going to go in a second time. After 3 days, they can re-enter. And I've set a limit here. So I've said, well, they can re-enter 4 times. So once they hit 4 times going through this engagement, it's not going to be useful information for them anymore. I don't want them to come in any more than that. So I'm going to go ahead and click save there. And that will be all of my entry criteria to start that engagement. Notice that I am living in this build tab here. So if you come into an engagement and you see something else, or you're trying to click and you don't see that, make sure you're on the right tab. I haven't activated this yet, so it's still in draft mode as well. One of the things about the canvas is that when you come back on, you always have to zoom back in. So notice that I'm using these up and down buttons, or you can use this to recenter at the top, that little button in the middle. So I have an email going out. This is going to be one of my action steps, is send email. So I have decided to send that email. It's called event invitation, but I can search any of my email templates that I have saved in my org and that are available for engagements. Remember, on your email template, that's actually something that you have to select for it to be visible here. If you don't see it in your engagement, go back and have a look at your template. You selected the right choice there. And when do we want it to go out? We can choose either immediately, wait, or on a certain date. And on a date, we have our little calendar down here. And you can see the help text says prospects arriving after the specified date will skip this step. So just do keep that in mind if you're hard coding any dates in there. We're going to say immediately and save. And then we have another icon type here that is going to be our trigger. And we are listening for an email link click. So we are listening to that event invitation that was up there before. You'll see that that's the only email available to us, because for our event, for our clicks and our opens, it has to be on an email that's in your engagement. So which link, we can either say any link in the email or a specific link. Here we're just going to say any link, and we're considering it a click. We're happy. And then evaluate when. So when should this evaluation take place? This is where it gets really nifty, because we can either wait for a maximum of or wait until. And this is one of the things that, having taught Pardot and Marketing Cloud, people in coming from Pardot to Marketing Cloud miss this, because you have just wait activities. It's the equivalent of the one down here. So it's going to wait 7 days and then move people on to the next step. This wait up to a maximum of 7 days. If they click on day 2, then they're going to move to the next step, which makes it so that people are going at their own pace through this engagement. And as soon as they show that action, as soon as they hit that engagement point, then we want to do something else with them. We don't want to wait until the end of that 7 days to send them their next email, for example, once they click on the link. We want to start them down the next step right away. So that's where this up to a maximum of 7 days is going to listen for 7 days. And if they click the link at any point during those 7 days, they'll send them down a certain path, the engaged path, or if they don't, then we'll send them down the not engaged path. So that is a really cool functionality in here, and just one that I wanted to surface for all of you today. And then we have a, so see that the icons do change, so you can tell what's an action, what's a trigger, and what is a rule based off of the color of the icon, the types of icons. And once you're working with engagements pretty often, then you'll start to get familiar with those. Here we're going to have our rule go off of a grade. So this is going to be that the grade is greater than equal to a B score. And if it is, then we want it to evaluate right away. And we want them to go down a certain path. And here we're going to assign them to a user in Salesforce. And just going back here, you can see the actions, you can see this whole list here. So everything that we saw on those slides before, those are actions that we can set up. The same thing goes for rules here. If we went back here, we would see all of those rules available to us. So we are going to assign to an admin user, and then we are going to create a task in Salesforce. So our subject is hot lead. We're going to assign it to the assigned user. Our priority is high. Our status is not started. The due date is 2 days from today. And then we're going to send a reminder after 5 days. And any comments. So we're going to say, based off of the back of this event, then this lead is considered hot. It may be anything that you're trying to share with those users. You want to have a good description, because more than likely in Salesforce, your users are going to be getting a whole ton of different tasks. You want them to know why they're getting this task and what action needs to be taken off the back of it. So be descriptive there. Send them to additional information if needed. You can even put links in here, things like that, but be really thoughtful with the rest of your team. And then they're going to end. So this is where this is a relatively simple engagement here. We'd probably want more happening if they weren't a B score. So we would want them to have an action coming off of this. You can see that it's really easy to add steps in. So you just click on the plus at any point, and we can come in and add an element in. So we can either choose action, trigger, rule, steps, or place an end there. So we're in the middle. We can't place an end right here. It doesn't make sense for us. But we do have all of those other options. Also, we can select our steps here. And maybe we want to go ahead and copy our steps. And I'm just having some trouble highlighting this. So we could select these steps, and then if my browser just doesn't want me to do it right now, and then press this copy up here, and we can paste those steps in there too. So if we had any copied steps on our clipboard, we could just paste them in, especially if you have a path that you're just trying to alter a little bit, but you have 10 steps already on that path. Use the copy and paste function. It makes it really nice and easy. And then you can just go in and make those little edits so that it is making it specific to that path that you're working with. So with that, we'll go on to our starting testing and editing of our engagements. And to start the engagement, we have a lot of screenshots in here because I know that it's hard to get your hands on a Pardot demo org. So not everybody may have that. And especially when you're studying, you want to come back and see as many screenshots as possible. So this is the little window that you would see when you start the program. You can choose either to start it now or to start on a scheduled date and time. And stop as well. So maybe we know that a certain product to launch, it's going to be running until a certain date or time, or maybe something is seasonal. We want it to end at the end of the season. We don't want to have to put it into our calendars to go in and turn it off. We can put it in here. I'm a lazy admin. I don't like to have to remember to come back and do things when I can just schedule it into the engagement. And then once it is scheduled, so we'll just do our quick demo. We've set up this up. We're saying it's good to go. We're going to start it. We can always come back and edit it and add to it later. So, and actually, there we go. That's the button I was looking for. So this is selecting what we would like to copy. So we may say that we want to copy this and then go ahead and put those pasted steps over here. So there we go. Then we could just come in and edit those so that maybe it's fun. We're not calling them a hot lead anymore, or maybe we're just taking this one out completely. We might say that they are a low priority. We can do a lot here. Or we may decide just to delete that completely because our task is not important to us here. So we can come all the way down here to that delete button and take that one out. So we just, oh, sorry, I'm used to going off of my big screen here. So don't see those little pop-up windows. There we go. All the way up here at the top, they just want to check to make sure before we actually delete something. Then we just have that assigned to user that we've pulled over. We're going to say we like this. So we're going to start the program. We click start in the upper right-hand corner of our canvas, and we decide that we want to start it now and we want to stop it maybe tomorrow. So we want to stop it tomorrow at 1. That looks good. I'm sure. Let's go ahead and activate. So now our prospects will be going through, and we see that pushed us over to our report tab. And our engagement has been updated to a starting. So now we'll be able to see our activity here. We'll see this in a second in the slides, but since we're in here in the demo, we can see our activity. We can see that the engagement was actually created on November 14th and then started on November 15th. And who started it? It's a nice, basically, audit trail so that you can see what happened and when. And then our report. So this is where we'll see a demo of this in a moment. So testing in Engagement Studio is really cool. We have our test tab, and we're able to start the test and give criteria to test out the different paths. And it doesn't actually send out emails or change prospects or do anything, but it's really like the debug in Salesforce. If you've worked with something like that before, it's debugging our Engagement Studio. We can make sure that the results that are going to happen for each individual are as expected. So if we want to test this one, right now it's still starting, so I can't come in and test it. Should have tested it while it's still in draft mode. Oh, let's come back in here. It doesn't like that on my browser of refreshing the page. This might be due to my internet as well. I'm hoping that it'll come back for us. Actually, I'm just going to switch connections real quick. If I drop for a second, I will be right back. There we go. It's liking it better now. So we can come back in and we can this one is still in starting mode for us. So let's come back into an engagement that's already been created. We have a top of mind program here. There we go. Since this is on pause mode, then we'll be able to come in and see this test function. So we have a nice, relatively complex engagement. You can see that there's a lot of things happening. This is a very common look for an engagement because it may be that it's not just two paths that you want to send people down, but you want them to, based off of their engagement here, for example, we have a link that's being clicked. If they click on that link, we want to adjust their score by 10 points. If not, we just want to send them down to the next step and get that next email. So you'll see a lot of times that you're rejoining your different paths on the same path so that you don't have to be recreating actions. It's really nice to join people back in together. If you're having the same sort of general path, you can see this one sends 3 emails and then adjusts scores and notifies users at the end. And just a nice top of mind campaign. So we have our test. We're going to begin it based off of today, but you can choose your date. It's going to send somebody down and you'll see the question, was the email clicked? So you see your nice test log over here to the side and you can click into here and see some more information. This one is during business hours, so it would have gone through. And the email was sent. Was the email clicked? That's where we are right now. We're going to say yes. It sends them down that. Then the score was adjusted and it goes to the second email. The second email wasn't clicked. So it just went down and sent them the third. And you can see that all of this is being tracked in the log here. This one was clicked. So adjusting the score again. And we have a really engaged user. So they waited until the 1st of January, then clicked on this again. So we have the score being adjusted and the user notified. And you can see that at any point you can end the test, you can start over again so that you can engage as different users. And it's basically testing all of your different possibilities. So that way you can have a nice trail here and see, well, if a user did this, this is the audit trail. This is what would happen. So some really nice test functionality built in. And then we get to editing. So we saw that this was actually a big part of the exam is editing and engagement. And it's especially, I've seen a lot of questions around how time works in engagements because this is the consideration. So when you edit an engagement, you're going to have to pause the engagement to edit it. So you could see that in the engagement that we were doing, it was actually still in the process of starting. So we couldn't stop it to edit it. And then we couldn't make any changes in it. We couldn't even test it. So the engagement that we were just in and just testing was actually a paused one. And each time it pauses, it's going to restart as a different version. So we'll see that slide around that with some more information too. But when we're editing an engagement, there's a few different considerations around time. And I even saw this as a question in the chat already. So it is a big consideration here with engagements is how does that time work? So for any prospects that are on a step with a wait period, that wait is paused when the engagement program is paused. And then the prospect remains on that step until it's resumed. And when it does resume, the process then finishes the wait period before moving on to the next step. So we're going to see some examples pulled straight out of Salesforce help documentation. So that's where I would say the help documentation for Pardot is great. It comes with a lot of examples, and just scenarios, which if you've ever taken a Salesforce exam before, you know that they're very scenario based. So you want to get familiar with that kind of thinking around your scenarios. And then the next question consideration is what happens when a prospect is suppressed or removed from a list. And in that case, they are removed from the engagement program. So if they are waiting on steps in the engagement program and are removed from that list, then it doesn't adjust wait time for prospects that are removed and then added back to a program. So if they are removed, then it does not make that adjustment when they're removed and added back in again. How does it work with send emails and during business hours enabled? If you customize your business hours for sending emails, so we saw that you can do that when you're starting the engagement. You have to choose business days and then you can customize your business hours. Then the wait period still counts each day. So if you have a wait period of 7 days, it's going to be going off of those business hours. It's not going to be going off of a 24-hour day if you have business hours chosen. And if a wait period expires outside of business hours, it's going to wait for the next set of business hours to start before sending the email. So maybe my example where I took off Wednesdays, then if somebody clicks on an email during a Wednesday, it's going to wait until Thursday morning to send them that email. It's not going to send on Wednesday because Wednesday's not in my business hours. And once again, this is coming off of help documentation. So if you click on one of those previous links, you'll see all of the help documentation over to the side. And these are all clickable links, so you can actually find out more information there if you'd like. And here's where I wanted to just take some time to go through the time considerations that are listed here. So we have 3 different examples that Salesforce has provided for us. One is a prospect on day 1 of a 4-day wait period. A prospect is on day 1 of a 4-day wait period, wait in a step. And the program is paused for 5 days. So this is where exam questions are criteria based. They are going to get you thinking through things. This might be an exam question, so pay close attention here. Once the program is restarted, the prospect will finish the remaining 3 days of the wait before moving on to the next step. So some considerations to keep in mind here. The time-based wait times resume when the program is restarted. So here, the program was paused, it was restarted, the times resumed when it was restarted. And when a wait is date-based and the program isn't paused on that date, everything continues as expected. So if you've hard-coded a date in, then as long as that's not when your program's being paused, then it doesn't come into consideration at all. So example number 2, a prospect is waiting for an email to send on May 5th, but the program is paused from May 4th to May 6th. When you resume the program on May 6th, the prospect has missed the email and is moved on to the queue for the next step. So this is because you've hard-coded a date in, you've hard-coded May 5th, it's not waiting a certain number of days, but it's waiting until an actual date. So if you pause during that date, this is a big consideration. If you're making edits, you want to time them well. If you know that that's one of the dates that a step is supposed to happen on, you may want to wait because the step is completely skipped. And when the program is restarted, it moves on to the next step. So once again, these are all really important parts of the exam because they're really important parts of a real life marketing campaign. And using Pardot is if you have something really important scheduled to go out May 5th, don't use May 5th as the date of your edit that you're making. Don't pause the program. And then our example number 3 is a prospect lands on a trigger step, clicks the trigger link after 3 hours, and enters a 5-day wait. You pause the program, remove the wait time, then resume the program after 1 hour. The system evaluates the prospect's activity for only the first hour after they land on the trigger step because that's how long the program was paused for. The waiting prospect didn't take any action during the first hour, so they're sent down the no path for the trigger action. So this one is about the edit containing a wait period removal. We're actually removing that 5-day wait. So you can see that it removes and reevaluates right away. So if the wait time is removed while the program is paused, the prospect activity is evaluated from the time the prospect landed on the trigger to the amount of time the program was paused. So it's basically going to be from when that trigger started all the way up to when you restart the program. And depending on the circumstances, waiting prospects can automatically be sent down the no path for when it's resumed, as in example 3. So if there's no action in that 1 hour that you had the program paused for, then they're going to be sent down the no, the disengaged path, and they'll continue down that one. So as promised, some more information about our versions. Versions, you can add comments when you're restarting. So when you pause, when you want to make an edit to an engagement, you have to pause it. You're not going to be able to make an edit to an active engagement without doing so. You are going to pause and then restart when you're ready to go back live. And each time it will make a new version. We'll see that in the activity tab. And you can add comments, and that's really helpful for other people to understand what happened, what was the change that you made. And that way you can look back and understand how that engagement is working. Maybe you're seeing metrics that are really different from one date or one like set of dates to the next. So you may look at the activity on that engagement and say, oh, actually, there was a pretty major change made in between those two chunks of time. That's probably where this change came. And either it's something positive or negative. So if it's something positive, I want to do more of the same. But if it's something negative and negatively affecting my marketing campaigns, then I may want to roll that change back. So I can't do any of that if I don't know what happened. So add some useful comments so that other people, or even just your future self, you may think, I absolutely will never forget this huge edit that I made to a campaign, but give it a year, come back, try to look at what you did, and you may not remember at all. So even your future self will thank you. And creating a version does not restart your prospects from the beginning. So prospects are going to remain in the engagement. And then based off of our time considerations, based off of the type of step that they're on, things like that, then they will still remain in that engagement and just pick up when you restart the engagement. So they do not enter and exit, they just remain there. So then some engagement studio reporting for us. We saw that report tab before. There's a few different places where we're going to be able to get some really great metrics around our engagements to help us see how healthy our engagement is, what's working, what's not working, and really be able to analyze it so that we can either improve it, we can decide it's not working, or do something else, or stop it altogether. So we have what we call report cards. Report cards are going to have the number of people or the number of prospects that are queued on each step. So right now we have 148 people queued in the send email step. Then you can click into that activity and you can see a specific version. So we may decide that we only want to see metrics for version 2 or the most recent version. Then we can filter by version here. And you can see some really useful metrics as well. So what's the date? It's from December 19th, 2020 to today. We have a 91% open rate. Pretty awesome as far as our open rates go for our email. Out of 148 sent, 134 were open. There was a click-through rate of 4%. 6 people opted out, and there was only a 5% bounce. So pretty healthy email all around. And do note that a step's metrics do not include information associated with prospects who are currently waiting on that step. So if they're in a wait period, then you won't actually see them in this email queued. They'll still be on that wait step. So the report card's really useful, but there's other places where we can get reporting information as well. On the toolbar, there's a tools, which we'll demo in a second, so you can see where all of this is. And you can download a CSV export file. So that's going to contain all of your versions of the program, including things like total number of prospects started and completed, the percentage completed, the step types, the step names, and the asset names. You can also, on your canvas, filter by date to show statistics only for that certain time period. So if you're looking at historical information, you're seeing some sort of anomalies that you want to be able to investigate a little bit more, see what happened, see more metrics around that certain time period, you can set that on the canvas. And when you do filter by date, the tooltip and exports show only activities that occurred during that time. So that's where if your CSV file shows less information or less time than you expect, check the time on the tooltips and make sure that you don't have a time filter. Or on the other hand of that, you may want to only get the CSV export for a certain time period. Somebody's requested more metrics around this time period. Turn on that filter, and that way you don't have to filter out on the CSV later. It'll only pull out the metrics that you're looking for. So that's where we're going to demo really quick up. I'm going ahead of myself, but showing that we're actually at the end here. So we'll have some time for any questions. Start to think of them already. So in here, we have our test. We're able to see our report. So this is where, once again, it comes out quite a bit. But I can see the people who are queued for each one. So we have 50 people starting, 50 people have gone through and seen the first one. If I click into this, I'll see a list of those actual 50 prospects here. Just going back to our engagement. Then I can I keep doing the same thing there. Where's that report card coming up? There we go. So I can click onto the step itself. Don't click onto the number like I was doing there. Click onto the step and then we'll see our report card. So this is where we can see all of our versions. We have all versions or the top of mind version. You can see that the metrics change based off of the version I've selected, and you can see the dates change as well. And we have 34 people who are considered yes, they did click through, and 16 people no. So we can see that this is the email that was sent out. We can see a little picture of it, the icon coming up to the side, and then we have that filter here too. So we can say that we only want this for this quarter. So you can see that actually this is a dummy org, nothing happened this quarter. So it goes down to 0. We can do today, we can do custom or all time. And these ones up here are considered our relative dates. So it's going to be calculating based off of the date today, and it will always be updating for you. So if you're only ever interested in metrics for this quarter, then you can leave it on there. Otherwise, custom is where you can hard code those dates in. So I may say I want no specific dates where I want my date range to go off of. So I'm just going to put this back to all time. There we go. See all of our information. Otherwise, we do have that activity tab. So this is where we can see some more information here. And then we have our tools as well. So this is where if you click on tools in the upper right hand, you'll have that CSV export. And that will just be an Excel spreadsheet. It's CSV stands for comma separated values. And if you want to import any information back into Salesforce or back into Pardot once you've manipulated it maybe, then it needs to be a CSV file to be able to do those data imports back in. So you'll see that this file actually brought up our top of mind program. We have the total prospects. I can make these a little bit bigger so we can see everything here, but it has all of our asset names and then a lot of cool metrics around them. We can see our opt-out rates, for example, based off of each of the asset sets. So it's a really nice report that I could then go ahead and email to my whole team to show them how our engagements are doing, or maybe hand off to a marketing manager, or just have that historical information saved somewhere. So that brings us to the end of our engagements, and I hope I've gone over a pretty high-level view of our engagements and a couple of demos, but if you do have any questions, please do put them into the chat. I don't see any now, but I will come on to our very last couple of slides here in the meantime. We have some additional resources. So like I said, we'll share out this link. I'll actually throw it in the chat here as soon as I finish sharing my slides. And that way you can go in and click through. All of these are clickable links, so it'll bring you straight to a user guide from Pardot. This is a really useful one, just that high level view of Engagement Studio. That white paper, this is one of my top favorites. And also some great blogs that I've gotten off of the drip. This should be the drip twice, so I renamed the drip the drop. Not sure that Salesforce Ben will be happy with that, but we'll update that typo here. But even building advanced nurture campaigns, 9 best practices. This one, for example, has things around like those tags and different things like that. So if you're looking for some more, this is a great place to go. And then the Spot for Pardot is also a great Pardot-based blog. So 10 Engagement Studio gotchas. Of course, our help documentation, so that's at the bottom of these slides. And then Trailhead has some good ones, especially this Pardot Engagement Studio for Lightning app. Then I'll just bring us to our cheesy bit of encouragement before going on to any questions. So if you are taking the exam, good luck to all of you. You've got this. Keep coming to these boot camps. And then a little thank you. And I think I see some questions coming in. So
Yes.
Prakash, if we need to see the prospect in which stage of an engagement, where do we find it? So for the individual people on a prospect, you could see that in the Salesforce side potentially. So one of the Visualforce components that you can put on Salesforce contact or lead records is their engagement history. So if you were looking for one individual person, I'd probably go into either the prospect audit, where you'll see all of that prospect's engagement and see their engagement history there. Or if they are on the CRM side, then you can also see that through that Visualforce component. Yeah, no problem. Oh, your question before. A project is on day 3 of a step with a designed wait time of 5 days. The engagement studio is paused for 1 day and then restarted. If the wait time for the step remains at 5 days, what day of the designated 5 days would the time of wait time would the prospect be on when the program started? So you're on, prospect is on day 3, it's day 5 total, you waited a day. So that would be based off of our slide, our example up here, it would restart when the program is started. So it would be the same as this example here. So here they're on a day 1 of a 4-day wait period, and it's paused for 5 days. And when it's restarted, the prospect finishes that remaining 3 days. So it actually pauses that wait time. So if you were on day 3, then it would pause for 5 days and then restart. It would have 2 days left. So after you resume, it would go through and do those remaining 2 days. If I did that math correctly. Once again, it's on a Monday morning, so my math skills might not be as sharp as they should be. Cool, and I don't see any other questions. Kathy, do we have questions for them then?
Yes, we do have questions. We have a Kahoot quiz. Just a second. Thank you so much, Vicky, for such an insightful session. I'll be giving out them the slides link. And
Yeah, no problem. I just threw that into the chat too. So for anybody who's live on the session, it's there for you.
yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.